Hello and welcome to the Pawn Pro podcast. I am super excited, honored, all of the things, because today I get to have my dad, Steve Mack, on the podcast. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Tally.
So, what I wanted to do is I want to host 2 episodes with you. I want to focus this one on your experience in the pawn industry, how you got into it, how you built your company. I was a backseat driver to it, so I come on here and I talk a lot about, oh yeah, my dad did this, or oh yeah, I remember going to these kinds of events or giving back to the community in these ways. So I thought we could hear it from your words of how you basically built your company. And then in another episode, we'll talk about software and being a visionary for this industry as it relates to software, how you come up with all of these ideas of where technology is going, how you've placed like really big, important bets in e-commerce and mobile and things like that. That's for another day. So let's just start with the easy question, which is how'd you get into the pawn industry?
Well, as I look back, I didn't quite start as early as you did. I mean, you were in diapers and crawling on the floor, but I started when I was had interest in wanting to know what my dad did. My mom, would pick me up, and then we'd come down to the store once in a while. And then I was 9 years old is when is my memory of the kind of exciting parts of like working in the pawn shop and looking around and see what was happening. And at that age, and just letting me kind of like walk around this tiny store. It was only about 1,500 square feet. It was long and rectangular. Didn't have a bathroom. Lots of really kind of grimy stories about what you have to do when you don't have a bathroom, but we'll pass that. The cool thing was just the place of discovery, and I was just a nerdy kid. I loved taking things apart. There was all kinds of things I could take apart, probably to the chagrin of a lot of customers who had their loans in there. But I used to love to take apart guns, and take apart tools and open stuff up and look at instruments and so lo and behold, I always wanted to go down to the pawn shop and see what was going on until I started taking interest in watching how my mom and my dad were like in the store working, and how they would talk to the customers and how the customers would come in and ask about them and like what the relationships were. They were so dear. They were so sincere. They were so like eye-opening, the stories, and what people were willing to share, and how like just human beings are like living all these different lives, and they need like a few bucks in their pocket to get through the next day till payroll. Or just really heartbreaking stories about certain things that happen in life that they need, a few extra bucks to get them through. I really just love that part. And then like summer after summer, I was working in the pawn shop, and it was so like interesting. I knew what I needed to do. My dad wasn't organized, and I'm just like so like buttoned up, and I like things put away, and there was plenty to do because every summer it just turned into another disaster, beginning and the end. And I would work the 90 days from summer and he'd pay me $1 a day. And I used to go to my favorite restaurant every afternoon and get my hamburger and come back and work. He couldn't keep me out of there, and I started working in the back and getting organized. And I came up with the first idea of how to quickly find an item, because remember, a customer would come in with something, my dad would stick it in any of the shelf in any location. He'd spend half an hour back there panicking. I can't find Bill's camera. And then I came up with this little book, and I said, hey, just put down their number and then write down on the shelf location. And I hand numbered all the locations in the shelves. And that ultimately became a part of the program when I very first developed the first program. So that takes us to about when I was 15 or 16. Mom and Dad never wanted me in the pawn business. So it was like, just loved doing it, but there was no way I was going to be a pawnbroker. Just kind of following along, what your parents wanted you to do. And except my dad said, hey, the best job to have when you go to college is be an accountant, which is the degree that I pursued. and then got my accounting degree. I was 21 years old, ready to like start my 2-year stint in accounting, and then eventually go to law school. And just the thought of that right now gives me like the jitties. Like, there's no way I could go to school anymore. Last thing I want to do is take that accounting test. And but I had the job working for Pricewaterhouse, and lo and behold, the very first question that the partner of the firm asked me was like, "Why are you here to be like an accountant, public accountant?" I think it was like most kids would answer like, "This is my dream." And I said, "You know what? I don't think I belong here." "Oh, what?" he says, and then lo and behold, I called my dad up. I really didn't know what he's going to say. "Hey, what do you think about me coming in the pawn business?" And he said, "Oh, I'd love that." So drove home, came back, and just started getting into it. And then, my dad wasn't like somebody that like wanted to be like in charge. I mean, he was just like waiting for the moment to give it to someone else. Or he was such a great delegator. It was like, "Here's the keys. It's yours."
I can't relate to that really.
Right. Here. It's going to be a lot of fun, believe me. And, geez, it was like, what was I going to do? It was like the laws were bad. There was no association. How are we going to change things? The store was like the location, the signs, just the cleanliness of the store. I thought, God, there's just so many things. And like, it seemed like anything I would do, like it had a positive result. And I talked to other pawnbrokers because I used to walk into all the other pawn shops and listen to them and talk to them, and they're all pretty much doing the same thing. And I just became kind of a contrarian of the pawn industry. Whatever they were doing, I was going to do it different.
Yeah.
Tear it apart, re-examine it. How can we do it better? And it was all about the customer. Like, make it easy for the customer. How can you do that? Such a novel idea. You look at Amazon, you look at everything today, like self-service, pick it up, self-service, walk out. Don't even pull your credit card out.
Right.
Like back then, it was like you had to talk to somebody. You had to like schmooze and talk and listen, and the price was too high, and you had to negotiate, and then there was just so much effort put into each one. Some of it was really important because on the high-touch sales with jewelry, where there's like this emotional purchase, I mean, it does take real quality kind of hand-holding and selling, and we were heavily in jewelry. But other aspects of the business were just too complicated. And then the laws, and then the reputation. Pawn shops, I listen to pawnbrokers now and they're saying, "I'm going to change the pawn industry," which I love. There's nothing better.
Yeah.
I love when pawnbrokers want to do that because there's so much still that needs to be done. But, we were, at the end when we had, like, when I say we, it's like now we're in store 5, store 6, store 10. Like, it was a we, but it was like everyone, like, really enjoyed the message that we're going to change the industry. Everyone that we attracted that wanted to work in our pawn shop. Everyone in the pawn business thought I was crazy. They would say, "How much did you spend on that store?" Because I was like, it was outside, it was the interior, it was like, I couldn't make it nice enough. They're going, "Customers don't need that."
Yeah.
They don't want to come into a store that they want to see like the impoverished condition of it appearing like everything in here is like a deal, and it has to be because but the point of the thing is that most of our customers were women. Most of the people were afraid to come in. They were usually in locations that were terrible, and like you couldn't like torture or put people through more suffering than for them to have to go into a place that didn't look safe to go into.
Yeah.
It's like so horrifying.
Yeah.
It's a transaction for a new customer to come in a store. Again, I'm talking about the consumer. Like, it was so horrifying. I always put myself in the consumer's place, and I figured, oh, what's the solve for that? How can I make them more comfortable? And then my mom and my dad had such a special like way of merchandising, and they had company parties, which were about bringing their customers in and thanking them. They used to give away turkeys. We used to give like bottles of whiskey to every one of our customers during the holiday time.
Yeah.
We used to build like Christmas trees of like champagne bottles and give away champagne bottles.
How did you guys start doing that? Like, who was the one that, like that? It feels so early for really like customer satisfaction and customer service and like
Your grandma.
so inventive. My grandmother, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not surprising.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, what can we do for this? Like, how can we say thank you?
Yeah,
You know, and it was like, huh. And, you know, and it was like, and then with me, it was like, how can we give away more bottles, like 10 times more bottles for the same price, because we were spending a lot of money for those whiskey bottles.
yeah,
And I'm going, you know, and then I went directly to the liquor distributor, and I said, how can I buy like more bottles for this budget I have? And like I was buying like really cool bottles of wine from Chile for like 59 cents.
yeah.
I was giving away like this really nice wine because this is, you know, of course, 30, 40 years ago. And yeah,
I think it's
I don't
really
know.
cool because we're going into holiday season, right? Like Thanksgiving is next month, then Christmas, and holiday season is like really picks up. And so I think it's just a good question to be asking as a pawnbroker, like, how can I say thank you? I guess today, if you were in the business and you had a pawn shop, what would be some of the ways that you would be saying thank you? Or near the end of having Super Pawn, what were some of the ways?
I think giving someone like something physical and celebrating, and it's a bottle of champagne, it's still affordable,
Yeah,
you know, and I mean, at the end of the day, like the only reason why you have business is because the customers are walking in.
yeah,
And if people actually have to borrow money during Christmas, I mean, think about that.
right.
Cheering up their day, turning it around.
Yeah.
It kind of
That's
reminds me as I'm talking about it, like when I would like think about what type of like employee I want, I say I want a nurse. I want someone who's really listening well to the customer, who really wants to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the type of personalities when we were like when we had 350 employees and we knew that we were going to have to find, 40 new associates working at the loan counter. Like we were thinking, like, what kind of people do we want?
Yeah.
Like, we want people that care.
Yeah,
That's
that's
all.
amazing.
Because we had the system, right?
Yeah.
They didn't need to know like everything. They just need to be people who had patience and listened and helped the customer, and then you walk them through the system. And we haven't talked about systems, but
We'll get there.
yeah.
I think like one of the number one things that still challenges pawnbrokers that I talk to is hiring and retaining, and how to find the right personality, and whether you go for personality or experience or how people hire. And I think finding a type of person like a nurse, right? Like those qualities is really helpful. It's like having a inspirational company that you're trying to model your culture after. It's like these things become tangible qualities to look for in somebody. I've never heard somebody say a nurse, so I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is a secret to pawnbrokers, but we discovered that as we were talking to customers, they were the best potential candidates. And then our organization would say, but they don't have any money. Like they're desperate. We don't want someone because of the concerns about security and stealing. I'm going, no, they have a job. Come on, let's talk about it. These are just people that need to borrow money. And it's like actually an interesting conversation as I remember it. But I mean, tap into the people who are walking in, because it's word of mouth. And so talk to the customers, say, hey, we're looking for someone like you.
Yeah.
Do you have a friend? I mean, so I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's great advice.
That's just low-hanging fruit. Really cost-effective recruiting.
So you mentioned that when you first started in the industry, the laws were very unfavorable. What were those like, and How did you get involved in legislating?
Oh, this is back in the days when there wasn't ID. It wasn't required. And it was the most controversial thing. Well, one of the most controversial things that I changed. And it was, so we had generational like reputation in Reno, and it wasn't great. My dad had a very kind of tenuous relationship with the district attorney, and it was just, a lot of times you run into these situations. It's not uncommon, and then it was I really like, Dad, like, why doesn't Bill like you, like what's going on? And he told me, and it made sense, and something triggered him, and he had an argument with him, and I go, well, we need to fix that. So Bill was like the DA, but when I came into the business, he was the Senate Majority Leader. So, and what was wrong was, like, we had this reputation taking in stolen merchandise. Like, we're a fence.
Yeah.
And essentially we were. There was no way to track anything, and the bad people would steal stuff, and of course they just take it down to the pawn shop back in the old days, and there was no reporting.
Right.
And people would say, oh my God, that's the best thing that's ever happened. Now, you still reported a card, but there was like no ID attached to it. Like, it was Bill Smith. You filled it all in, but it wasn't required.
Yeah.
So our interest rates were super low. There was no reason for anyone in the legislature to want to help out with that. And so I said, what can we do for law enforcement to help them? And that was the pivotal change in strategy. And then we needed a pawn association. So I started the pawn association, became the president and founder of the Nevada Pawnbrokers Association that year. A friend of mine had said, hey, you need an association. Can you get the pawnbrokers together to do that? And anyone that started or works in the pawn associations know, super hard to get any money out of the pawnbrokers.
Yeah.
But at the time, you walked through all the pawn shops, you collected the $200, you got 10 out of the 50, you got $2,000, and that was your budget.
Yep.
And you tried to find like a lobbyist, and the lobbyist that they'd used before wasn't really had the best reputation. And a friend of mine, who became a very dear friend, Harvey, said, hey, I like you. I'll be your lobbyist. And I go, I don't know how I'm going to pay you. He goes, don't worry about it. So the price was right. And he goes, come down to the legislature. If you do this, this, and this, which was his idea, was the association.
Yeah.
And he goes, we can get things going. I go, this is my strategy. What do you think of that? He goes, you got it. Partner with like the government agencies that you're providing like a really important service to.
Right.
And so it just all the dots connected. Like, you do this, then your reputation's better.
Yeah.
And now the police department's not saying, the pawn shops are the fences. They're the ones, because
Right.
they were dealing with this, and they still say it.
Yeah.
But there's less. Today it's like it became universal after that. Nevada was the very first state that required ID. Take credit for that. I know pawnbrokers aren't going to be too happy with that, but we got that. We were able to. Our interest rates then were, I want to say, was like 3.5% or 4% a month, and we got it to 5%. And it was like, that's huge. The pawnbrokers were happy about that. They saw that how different it was when the law was changed with the relationship with law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because we're on the same side now.
Yeah.
It was adversarial before. And it was a huge shift. And it made me as a pawnbroker feel better. I was like trying to figure out, because that was the reason why Mom and Dad never wanted me in the pawn business. They said, this is such a tough business. No one likes you. No one respects you. Like, you're really working against like the common good of people. That's how they perceive us. And so, of course, when I saw that, we have to change that. And so that was a big part.
Yeah. I remember that growing up. I always felt like you would talk about that a lot, changing the perception and the stigma. And I remember when I would fly back and forth between Reno and Vegas, I would tell people on the airplane, because I would like talk to people as I was flying by myself, like, oh, what what do your parents do, or whatever, like whatever people ask on an airplane. Oh, we're in the pawn business. And I remember one time you were like, I don't know if you want to tell everybody that we're in the pawn business while you're on an airplane when you're 10 years old. But now, obviously, like I love talking about it, and
Yeah, no, I mean, after the years, right? We became like, we're wearing the proud badge of it,
yeah,
and we're proud of it,
yeah,
and I'm proud of it, and I would never like deny that. But pawnbrokers and generations before us didn't have like the opportunity, and I maybe didn't see the potential there, and a lot of things have changed with law enforcement and all the different agencies, um, and I think that there's been some good progress with the associations
I
and
think
how
so too.
pawnbrokers now are a big part of it.
Yeah,
Um, and then I kind of found that I was pretty decent at it. Would go every year, every other year in the state of Nevada legislature, developed relationships, understood how politics play into being in business, in any
yeah,
business. So
yeah,
anyone that's in business, any kind of business, needs to like be a part of it, make small contributions. I really highly recommend that all pawnbrokers, give a check for $100. It's
yeah,
so important to all like the people that know you. Access, just saying that the person is like as important as any bad, really bad transaction a pawn shop can turn into a law. And that's what
yeah,
pawnbrokers sometimes say. They get mad when someone comes in for a stolen item. It's like it triggers like this reaction in all pawnbrokers, and you got to think like, hey, chill out. You know what? You know that it's not the right deal. Give back the merchandise to the customer. Let him walk
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Don't let him go and know somebody who's a legislator, who's his cousin, and say, I had this really bad transaction. That ends up being a law.
yeah,
So everyone on the front line of pawnbrokers, I hope they're paying attention to that. Like you're on the front line. Don't even allow anything like that. If it costs you $1,000, $5,000, like really think about it before you sue or fight, and understand the big picture of it, because in the scheme of things, in the long run,
yeah,
and we all know this, stolen property is even considered risk. There is
right,
no risk.
yeah,
And especially with the systems that we've developed over the years, people that are in Bravo, it's negligible, like
yeah.
so negligible. Um, yeah.
So let's talk about growing your business. How did you go from 1 to 2?
Well, when I went into it, when I came out of college, my dad was just shutting down his second store. And it was a gorgeous store. It was only a block away. It was such a sweet, precious store. My dad called it Frederick's, which is his middle name, Frederick's Jewelry and Loan. And my mom and dad used to walk in between the stores and work it. And my dad was always stressed out about it. It was just too much. So as I was walking in, they were shutting it down, and so we were back into one store. And my dad was so relieved, and mom was like disappointed, but she was working like both stores, like 12-hour days, and we had a really good manager there who was fantastic, a guy named Vic Dollinger. He was such a great guy. But lots of stories about running 2 stores, and I remember because I was away at college when, maybe a couple years before that, when the store started. But really, it was fired up while I was in college, and when I got out, I really saw the diversity and how he was able to, like, make it distinguishedly different, because he was thinking like, this is what more retail oriented pawn shop needed to be. And between my mom and my dad, they really figured out like there was an opportunity for retail and pawn, but it could have been done in the other store. They thought that it needed to be a different one, but so they learned a lot. But then I step into the store, and first 4 years I'm doing the legislative stuff. I'm redoing the store. I'm opening the store on Sundays to help pay for an exterior sign package that I wanted to put up, and the store just became like so successful. It was an icon. The store is an iconic location, and we had like fantastic clientele. We started really selling a lot of jewelry. Um, uh, Booba was such a great buyer. We were traveling all over the world and buying jewelry and selling it as used. And I was like, we couldn't keep enough merchandise in the store. It was such a great retail store, and people like found it because Reno's a tourist based, and it became more popular. People would come to our store just to shop, and then I started thinking about systems and really started kind of like I wanted more than one. And I still had, my dad and I, we were partners. I was working for my dad, but it was essentially a partnership. I treated it like one. And I was just very apprehensive until I wanted to open another store. He didn't. And to the point where I said, let's do this together. And he said, no. And I ended up opening the store, still working for my dad, right? But opened up the second store and figured out how to borrow the money. That's a whole other story. And borrowed 120% of the money to open a store, and had working capital and paid, bought this guy out who I'd been looking inside this guy's store. His name was Pierre, he's an Italian guy, beautiful, like heavy Italian accent, and used to work with his wife. And so it just clicked. Your mom and I were like working in that store. You were just a baby. That was the store that you were crawling around in.
Yeah.
And then I started developing the systems. So we had BCLS, Breeze Collateral Loan Systems, where it was managing inventory between both stores. And I had a very complicated accounting thing because I was consigning, like moving inventory between the two stores and trying to keep the books separate because my dad's store was my dad's store, this was my store.
Right.
And then there was another location that opened up. But that second store to my dad's, like he tried, it was the most difficult thing because it just basically requires you to spend twice as much time because there's no synergy, no leverage. You just have to be there.
Yeah.
In both. So, and there's no leverage or synergy until like store 5 and 6. Yeah. So you just go to 3 to 4 to 5 and it's like you don't have a life. I mean, you don't have a life anyways in the pawn business. Right?
Yeah.
But you have 5 stores you're going in. It's like I tell this story. I don't know where people like can relate to it, but when I sold the company, we had 43. But I used to remember all the safe combinations. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like, yeah, you still running it. You knew like you had 2 safes, 2 combinations, like, and so you're going into the stores. You're closing end of the month. You're doing this. You're hiring people. You're filling in. You're like. And I'm learning like all the difficult things in running more than one store, and they all had different names. This is so fun. Like, how I love to start like new names. Like, what are we gonna name this one? Like,
new logo, new colors,
new everything, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm saying, I start reading an article about. You're building like a chain. You're building something. It's about a brand. Build a brand. How do you build a brand? One name. Like, I'm thinking, because I had like back then it was, how many different advertisements can you buy in the yellow pages? So,
right.
Like you look in Reno, there'll be like 5 different pawn shops all owned by a series of like different partnerships at that time, and Michael was involved. And I haven't talked about Mike, but Mike was like a big part of politics and parts of the marketing things and the genius that he has had made contributions. But yeah, and then Super Pawn came and then we decided, what kind of pawn shops are we gonna have? Super Pawn.
Yeah.
Turquoise, yellow, and then on brand. Like, and you know how hard that is running business and all the things that we do now. And then consistency. I wanted to do, like, I really wanted to build a franchise, which we were able to do, but store 30. And owning a franchise and delivering that was that's a whole other, like, how did you do that? That was another story for another day. But it was like consistency. And then I'm like hiring people to make the loans. And how did you do that? Like, train, find another pawnbroker. But at the end of the day, everyone was running the store differently.
Yeah, I remember that. Like driving around. So I feel like by the time I was old enough to remember, right, growing up in the store, I don't really remember. I more remember by the time you must have had, like, I was 10. So you must have had 10 or 15 stores. And so I wasn't in just a single store anymore. We were driving around all of the stores and checking prices on inventory and did they match, and meeting employees and auditing the back room and making sure that the shelves were labeled and the cords were wrapped. And that's like when I feel like my memory sort of actually clicks in, is like the consistency of building a brand, going to new stores, ribbon cutting kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest case study. So I was like into case studies and looking at other, like, types of businesses that were, like, expanding, and the one that I would like people to think about is Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks struggled for a long time to actually pour the same coffee in every Starbucks store because they were different.
Yeah.
Like, the baristas would do it. Like, first it was training. Like, you grind it, you put it in, like, however they were doing it back. Now the machine is, like, consistent. Like, every time you go from one to the other, it's very rare not to have the same flavor. Why is that important? Like, in the pawn shop business, it's because they go to all your pawn shops. And then one of the things that customers would say, like, hey, I can buy that for less money in the other pawn shop. Like, what?
Right.
And I'm going, all of our prices should be great. They should all be the same.
Yeah.
And there's really no difference. And they should be consistent. And only difference they should be is if it's not in the same quality. And then so you're like, now you're like clicking and going, how do you do that? And
it's even hard within one location with multiple employees to be, this is highly relatable because I'm a million months pregnant and I've been eating at the same ice cream store for the last 2 weeks. And like, I like my certain ice cream, it's chocolate peanut butter, but they all make it different. And so like, sometimes I go and it's not like the same experience. It's not as good. And so it's a new store and they're like all high school employees, right? Like trying to figure it out. The owner's in there all the time, like, that one needs more chocolate. Just trying to create like some type of consistency in any kind of business as you're scaling employees is really hard. I mean, we have that in tech support at Bravo. Like, how do you scale a support team to all provide the same level of service with the same amount of knowledge? That part is so hard.
So hard. I mean, and you're saying like the one store, it was hard in a single store because, I mean, what sells first in the pawn shop if you're pricing everything the same?
Right.
The
The best
stuff.
condition. Right.
The best condition. And then what do you end up with that's sitting there for a year? The broken one.
Right.
It's still priced. It's not, but it is. And everything at the end of the day, if it's the same manufacturer model, let's say the PS5, and it's the same exact model, same size disk drive, it's digital, it's got the same number of paddles, the whole thing, right? And you have 5 of those, everyone should be priced differently based on the condition. And that's so hard if you're trying to do it manually, right? And that's what like is going through my mind when as we're constantly developing, like, how can we make this easier for pawnbrokers? And back then it was, how can I make it easier for, like, to your point, train all of our employees to do it the same way.
Right.
And then, because, like, think of it, if pawnbrokers are thinking about, like, really delivering a brand, and then we say, we want it to be, like, special, consistent, the same. And if your pawnbrokers have to think about that kind of stuff, which is pricing's number one, it's like the number one thing that customers get pissed off about. Anything that's overpriced, they think that you don't know what you're doing, especially today.
Yeah.
And so and if you can kind of like push that to the side and say that's already taken care of because I have a process or a system that's actually taking care of that, then you can actually just talk about and train your people on here's what you say, this is how you handle it. And then it becomes more consistent. And because you want to drive the best customer service, you just can't say that.
Yeah.
You have to really help provide that and then take out all the like the nuances of the difficulty if you can through process and systems so you can really focus on delivering it at scale.
Yeah.
Like it's one training thing on scale, like customer service. It's not like, oh, this is how you handle this problem.
Right.
And then when this is priced wrong, this is what you say.
Right.
You know? You can't. So yeah, it's all about HR. It was all about scaling people. It's all about training. Like people would say, you know, my craziness about developing systems while at Super Pawn, everyone was just say, yeah, he's just trying to make a system that thinks the way that he does.
I still
Sort
hear
of
that.
like, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of true. It's
Yeah.
sort of true because it's like I'm just trying to figure out like how can I make it easier for somebody?
Yeah.
How can I make it easier for the store? How can I like at the end of the day drill it all down so you have time for the customers rather than the admin?
Right.
Like take that out, take that out. We should be doing that. That's another piece of regulation, another piece of paperwork. Why? So that a store owner can spend more time to like push the regional, like the store manager and the employees so they can spend more time with the customers.
Right.
They can look at them, they can have a conversation. The system's doing all the work, you know, like in a blink of an eye. And so, yeah, that's the way that I think our system should be doing for our pawnbrokers. So at the end of the day, they're delivering the best. They have the time to be able to deliver like the time in front of a customer who's walking in their store because they're paying so much money and that customer's paying so much money to walk through the door.
Yeah.
And and you can't be running around like your head's chopped off and being like aggravated about like in old days like trying to find that item.
Right.
Right?
The panic.
And for that customer spending 20 minutes waiting.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's definitely essence and truth about that, but that is my intention as an operator. Is I think that's what software should do.
Yeah. So some of my favorite memories growing up in the industry was how you gave back. And I try to talk to everybody that I interview about ways to give back to the community and how to get involved in that because sometimes I feel like it seems like insurmountable to be able to start doing that. When did you start? I mean, I know we talked about holidays giving back to customers, but when did you become super philanthropic? Because that really stands out to me as an area that you spent a lot of time focusing on that was really meaningful.
Well, as being really young in the business, and when we had our store on Commercial Row, which was across the street from the soup kitchen, like as a little kid growing up you were making friends with the homeless. You knew them all. You knew like everybody that was coming in. And while everyone else was like afraid, I was like, I knew them by name. And they were trying to get by, and some people were panhandling, and they were trying to get by. Some people think that's not right, but and I became very like thoughtful or sympathetic, or I thought they were like great parts of our community, right? And so giving to first it was giving to the soup kitchen, and then a lot of people would say, well, why are you giving money to the soup kitchen? It's gonna facilitate like more people going in there. Like if they don't have enough food, then the people would go somewhere else. I mean, it's true. Like people would say that to me. I'm going, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Then it was my uncle. He belonged to the YMCA and to Ducks Unlimited. And and he gave in a big way. And I used to watch him at these events, and he used to give away like the biggest prize. It was usually like a fantastic firearm. And the other businesses would look at him, and he was giving away the biggest prize to Ducks Unlimited. He was in the gun business. He was a hunter. Mm-hmm. As a business leader, now he's a business leader, mm-hmm. a pawnbroker. I go, holy shit! This is how you do it. He was so respected, and he didn't let anyone, while he was alive, participating in those two groups, to let anyone give a bigger prize. He wanted to always have the nicest one. It's not, and a lot of people will give to nonprofits, but they'll give in the middle. No one remembers that. Think about it, if you really think about that.
Yeah.
So if you're going to give, be the number one. Now in YMCA, same thing. They had an annual fundraising, and they give. I mean, there was like they give away. I mean, they were YMCA in Reno was really sophisticated and way ahead of the time, and they were doing big things. But Dennis would always give the biggest, like fully contributed gift. Sometimes businesses will co-promote, right?
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't like these were business leaders that were going and giving. So in a way, it was like, first it was like he loved it. He understood the significance of being a leader in the community. It's almost an oxymoron back then, as a pawnbroker being the leader, giving the most.
Right.
Right. And
yeah, it changes perception.
it changes that, and then it feels good.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to love the YMCA. He loved what it represented. And then and so that's what made me kind of think about it. And then my mom, she was like, they gave more than they took for themselves.
Yeah.
So you grow up in a household like that, you know, where no, we're not going on vacation. We have to make sure that we have, like, that budget goes to, you know, that was a strong part of like seeing the value in philanthropy, selflessness. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's all kind of blended into like, oh, I want to make an impact. And that's when Super Pawn became the main sponsor in JDRF. Mm-hmm. Juvenile diabetes. Why did I pick that? Well, 8 kids. And then diabetes was like, you know, a thing, and I couldn't imagine little people getting needles shoved in them. Yeah. And wanted to do everything possible to help that subgroup, and then it had national, and then we did the sneaker drive. I don't know if you remember the sneaker drive. Mm-hmm. We sell the little paper sneakers for $1. Yeah. And then you get your customers involved in it. Yeah. So you're giving, your customers are participating, you're competing in the stores who can sell the most, right? Mm-hmm. And we became the largest single contributor to JBRF as a business in Nevada. So and then the frosting on top of that was when we sold our company to Cash America, they took it on. Mm. They saw, like, this feels good. And the consumers were participating in it too. And they saw, I mean, when you see the giving of people who are borrowing money, like people are like coming in your store, borrowing $100 and buying a sneaker for $1. Yeah. You start thinking like, where can you do it? It's just started like this is like good. It's a good thing. And we were proud of it. And we did the foster care kids, touching, like that was like highest impact personally, watching foster kids. And we would basically take all of our bicycles that we couldn't sell. We'd have them fixed. We would take them down and give away 100 bicycles for all these kids to take. That was fantastic. And then plus we give cash contribution to it. That was
I remember that one.
That was one of the most like feel good things. But at scale, the JDRF worked the best.
Yeah. I remember the bicycles.
Yeah. I want
Um,
to, I mean, I've been like for Bravo, I was thinking like, I wonder if we could do like, you know, like, add up the change,
yeah.
like, and then take the change and
The
then
roundup.
the roundup for each store that uses our system.
Yeah.
And then we give that money to JDRF, like maybe
Yeah.
reinstitute it somehow. Like
Yeah.
imagine 4,000 stores. We're all
Yeah.
doing the things. We're creating it. Like that would be super cool. But
I think
yeah,
about this a lot too because growing up, like most of the philanthropy was local that we did. Like it was in person and we would go do things. And at Bravo, we used to do things in Vegas. Like we would go out into the community and give back. And it's
yeah,
really hard being remote and figuring out
yeah,
ways to give back besides just monetarily, which is always a way to do it. And we do that. But it's hard to get everybody, we give everybody one PTO day to go do service. But
yeah.
it's still, I mean, I think about it
That's
all the
why,
time too.
yeah, you and I really haven't talked about it much, but it would be kind of interesting because the businesses in the stores, like if we did this JDR like through the system and we're able to do a roundup campaign, and then we'd accumulate the money by store, and then the store would cut the check, and then they would go to their community,
Yeah.
right? So they're giving locally, like just like oh, that's how like I've been thinking about it too, like how can we really impact, and then
Yeah.
just make it optional because not everyone wants to do that, but I don't know, that kind of resonates, right?
The other thing that's cool, I have a friend that has a handbag company, and one of the things that they do is they do at the end of checkout, you can round up, and they have like 5 different organizations that they support.
Hmm.
And then you can kind of select, and maybe we could build that something like that into Baya or something where you could round
Yeah,
up and then choose one
yeah,
of the 5 or something.
yeah,
Um, but I like talking about that.
yeah. JDRF is, I mean, I love JDRF.
Yep.
Love it. But there's so many. Like you say, there's probably,
Yeah.
we could go down the list. We could build it. Be nice to know what kind of feedback we get from this and whether our customers think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Let us know if you like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Tell us if you want to
Tell us if you
extend
want to
some
round up.
giving. And it's really like you're collecting money on behalf of customers that are coming into your store, and then you could do basically price match,
Yeah.
match it.
Match it. Yeah.
And match it, and then cut the check themselves, get a check in their name on behalf of Bravo, and then the check
Yeah.
for JDRF with the store's name on it.
Right.
Really make it something important, and then have the local JDRF representation come into the stores, and it feels so good, and it's great for the community, and it makes them a leader.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. What was your favorite part about building Super Pawn?
Two things. I love opening new stores. There's everything about it. You find a location, and you find the very best location you can. There's so many impediments. It's such a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You got to talk so many people into it. And then all the laws and regulations, and as I would say, so many hands, so many rings to kiss. Kiss so many rings. I mean, I used to get I remember I was in a councilman's office, and he said, "You want to open what? Are you fucking crazy?" There's no way. There was no way that this councilman even had an inclination of a pawn shop going into his. We got it on.
Yeah.
It was like one of the most. It was the hardest store I ever opened. Is in Henderson, Nevada. Hardest store, phenomenal business. It was next to a Costco in the parking lot. Like you could see it from the freeway. It was like everything about it was like check the box, super like. And then if you could actually accomplish get the location and then you get to design it.
Yeah.
And then of course it was all about optimizing. You're doing it again. And we weren't in the stage like Starbucks where every store was 1,525 square feet, right?
Yeah.
Is what you got. So but it was still, you wanted it to be the same, consistent brand.
Yep.
And then the grand opening. And that's all I wanted to do with it. I wanted someone else to operate it. The second thing was the people, like employees. Employees, to watch them rise. And so many, in the pawn business, you're really like, when you get good at it, you're really finding the diamonds in the rough. Mm-hmm. And you're really like, if you're really into it, you can really build, like, give someone the opportunity that no one will give them. And we've done that, you've seen it. So many of our employees in Bravo, like, turn out to be like rock stars. No one, like, they were like just down.
Yeah.
And then you see, like, even like at higher end executive level, because we had layers of management, you turn someone who's super smart, who takes the gamble to, like, work for a pawn shop.
Yeah.
Right? To see them turn around and be a part of our organization. And, you get 3 to 7 years out of a great executive in your organization. That's really good. And then watch them succeed.
Yeah.
And then for them to say, I'm as good as I am because I worked at Super Pawn.
Yeah.
And that just comes back over and over and over, like, been out of the business since 2004, and people still saying, thanks.
Yeah. We're just wrapping up Q3 reviews, and I think, our team and growing that is definitely the most rewarding part of building a company. And I remember at holiday parties for Super Pawn, we would have one in Reno and we'd have one in Vegas. I was allowed to go to those too. Then you'd have one in Arizona, and you'd have one where, like, all of your different pockets of stores were. But I remember, like, there was 10-year employees and 15 and 20 and 25 and 30. And, like, at the time it was special because you made it special, but I was so young, I didn't really understand the impact of, like, 10-year employees. And we have 3 now 10-year employees besides our founders and me. But we've had 3 people cross the 10-year mark in the last year. And every time it happens and I talk at a company-wide, like, I want to cry because I feel like we've all been raised together. Like, Bravo's kind of raised us all in our careers. Yeah. And 10 years is, like, such a long time to spend your time, helping build a company. And one was in customer service, and another's grown through the organization, is now on the IT side, and another is a salesperson, and just, like, the impact. And I was writing a note to one employee that just crossed 10 years today, and, like, the impact is so beyond their day-to-day of what they do at Bravo. It's, like, such a joy to, like, have these people on our team and what they become for the company. And I think that's, like, so special. I hope that we can celebrate 15 and 20 and 25 years with our employees. Like, it's
I was
so
just
cool.
struck. I was just struck by that when I was thinking about our employees at Bravo. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying, I'm going, like, I mean, I think we're good employers. I think we think of our employees. But I was thinking the other day, I'm going, what else can we, like, how else can we, like, give to these people that have actually shared their lives with us? Mm-hmm. I haven't, like, talked about it much to you. I'm going, we had to think of something, like, extra special to give to these employees.
Yeah. Well, you don't know this, but right now we're sending them all on a amazing vacation with +1s, and one went to Japan with a +1, and one's going to Costa Rica with a +1, and another one is open for where they're going. So we're doing something special.
Aw.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Good job.
Yeah, that's the decade. That's the decade prize.
Good
We'll
job.
have to come up with something for 15 years.
And then, of course, running Bravo is working with you.
Yeah. That is the best part.
Yeah.
And now my sister's in the business, which I feel like you and I probably, I always felt like I knew that I was going to work with you, but I never knew that Tahoe was going to work with us. So that's been, like, the most fun thing in the last year, is having her join.
That's about a 1% chance that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But what a joy, right?
The best. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
we
Well,
must be fun. We must be good to work for.
we must be
We must be
fun. At
kind of
least
a
we
fun
think we're fun.
family, and I
Yeah.
mean, we're kind of like, this is kind of a cool place to work. I think it says a lot about what you've done, because this has really been your company since you took over, and I see your employees. You've done a great job,
Thank you.
and we're just kind of like the tradition, right, and the culture.
Yeah. I think
And
one of
I
the
hope
cool
it
things is like being a fifth generation family business, and people always ask like, what is it like? And I'm like, well, we've had generations of experience of working for your parents. So I think that there's a lot of takeaways, and there's like, you're very intentional about that and what worked working with your parents and what didn't. And I think, the multi-generational part of that, we've learned a lot. We've learned probably more than I know as each generation has worked for their parents.
Well, what's with Bravo, and then everything that we've been in the pawn business. I mean, we grew Super Pawn because we wanted to be the best. We wanted to be outstanding. We wanted to change the industry, and we did it. And after that, when we started this, right? And being around pawnbrokers is like, it's such an incredible experience seeing them and seeing where they're at. And I don't know whether pawnbrokers actually like understand like how I relate to that when I'm talking to them, because a lot of times they'll say they react like he knows what I'm talking about, but they're kind of saying he knows everything. But it's sort of like, I know that you're at 6 years and 2 months and 21 days as a single store operator.
Yeah.
Because I was there.
Yeah.
And I can feel it. I know what it's like when they stick their keys in the door to open in the morning. Get the coffee going. I think those things still go on. And every single day at Bravo, all we really think about with our system is something they can depend on, 100% uptime. They can not think about things that they've had in the past, something that can help them do their business. And you've done such a terrific job at like the vision of being able to help small businesses and help pawnbrokers be successful so that they can be the best with their customers.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
Yeah.
And we're still carrying on the tradition. Like we really want to be the best, and we're never gonna if we're in this business, there's not a day that we're in it where we're really trying to help pawnbrokers be successful.
Yeah.
And everything about it. I don't know whether our customers know that, and if customers feel like sometimes we know what we're talking about, and we might not really listen, but we're listening. It's because we've been there. It's like we're talking, we're listening, we're like, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're saying, oh, well, you don't, because you don't really know. But that's how we click in. Running a software company and designing stuff, like we're so tight to the problems.
Yeah.
We fix things behind the wall that they just no one ever sees. It's because we care about that.
Yeah.
We care about that single store operator who's just running with their wife or their spouse or their friends with 3 people and making it, making a living at it. And we just want to help.
I talk about this when we onboard new employees and how important it is to me to help small business, because small business is, been everything in my life, and all opportunities have basically come from that. And so we don't hire people that don't care. And it's hard to explain that or try to get that sentiment through. And every day it's are we extraordinary? Are we exemplary? If we're not, that's where we need to go. That's in any one process, in any one customer experience. If it's not exemplary, we are not going to post it on a wall, then it's got to be better. The next time has to be better. So, yeah. The standards are high.
The standards are high. We care. We work our asses off.
Yeah.
We really work hard, everybody.
Yeah.
We do this. We live it. We love it.
Yeah.
We're really trying as hard as a company can try,
Yep.
and we have a lot more to learn, and we're listening,
Yeah.
and
Well, thank
we
you.
want our product to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always better. 1% better every day.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. We will dive into systems the next time around. I know that there's a lot to go into on systems, but thank you for coming on. Thanks for
Well,
joining.
thanks. It felt good that when I got that email that you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
You want to listen to me?
I want to listen to you.
Yeah, I haven't done it in a long time. I don't get around the pawnbrokers, but I just want all the pawnbrokers to know that we love them.
Thanks. Bye.